You're exactly right. It's so much more complex now. Now we have not just physical, but a digital layer and a spatial layer, right? And so um, it's really taking that same approach, the same methodology as the Ames did on that splint design, but then applying it to a digital product or space and an interior, right? Because um, it's not, the world we live in now is not products on pedestals anymore and in isolation, right? It's all about a larger story, a larger context.
Welcome to Design Drives, your audio experience about what, how, and why design drives things forward. A podcast hosted by Sebastian Gier, together with forward-thinking design practitioners from around the world.
I'm super excited to share that we will talk to Joey Zeledón in this episode. Joey not just has amazing design sketching skills, which you should have a look on his Instagram, but he also had outstanding work experiences in his career we're gonna try to learn from today. From designing sneakers at New Balance and Clarks, he went into broaden his design skills at consultancies like Smart Design or Continuum, before later joining Steelcase as a principal designer for their efforts on the intersection of spatial healthcare experiences and furniture design. We will talk about the increasing importance of design when it comes to emotional ergonomics and how this approach drives human-centered design and also, importantly, inclusive design. He is also the author of the book Feely, Touchy, where he explores these emotional ergonomics, and he is a co-founder of Mothership, a startup in the intersection of parenting and healthcare. Hi Joey, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Sebastian, thanks for having me.
We're super excited to have you as a guest on today's episode. Maybe for the beginning you can share a little bit how your early days of your career look like and how you got into design generally.
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny actually. Since I was maybe 10 years old, I knew for some reason, somehow, some way, I wanted to be a shoe designer. So I was fascinated with that one product category, footwear, and in particular, Nike Air Max, Nike Jordan, Air Griffeys. I would go shoe shopping with my mom, back to school sales at the mall. We would go to Foot Locker, and I would just be obsessed with this one product, and I innately thought that someone was getting paid for this. This was someone's job to design, this thing that is creating such an emotional pull for me and for many consumers. And so that's what got me into design. And I didn't even realize it at the time that it was, what it was called, that profession, industrial design or product design. And I guess it's more commonly referred to as industrial design, because I think nowadays product design is considered it's more of an interaction design, right? Like a digital. So that's where the seed was planted when I was 10 years old, which is crazy. But it wasn't until I was a teenager, I believe, maybe 14 or 15. I was visiting an uncle of mine who lives in just outside of San Francisco. I think it's San Jose, California. He asked me, Joey, what do you want to be when you grow up, or what do you want to study when in university or college? And I said, I definitely want to be a shoe designer. So I don't know what I have to study to do that. And he said, well, let's go on Nike's website and find out. And we did. There was, a job opening for a shoe designer. I can't remember exactly the details, but it said, must have a degree in industrial design. And it was that moment that I decided and knew that, okay, that's what I'm going to study. And I was only 14. And so I ended up enrolling at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, in 2002. And throughout those 4 years, I graduated in 2006. And throughout those 4 years, every project, not every project, but a majority of my projects, I always intentionally reframed them to be a shoe design project, and I was known as like the shoe kid, shoe design kid, and I think every class in design school usually has these subcultures or subgroups of design specialties, right? Some kids are into cars, some students are into shoes or toys or consumer electronics. So during my 4 years, I had 2 internships, both in shoes. One was at Clark's, which is a British shoe company, but I was at the U.S. location in Boston. And the second internship was with New Balance, which is also in Boston. And it was a nice range of experience within shoes, because I got to, with Clark's it was more casual, kind of fashion, brown shoe industry, and then New Balance was very much athletic. So I got I got to see both sides of the shoe world, and I loved it. I think it really satisfied that desire, and I ended up getting a job. My first job out of school, I got a job with Clark, so they asked me to come back, and I did it. I became a full-time shoe designer, and that was a great feeling. And it was really just such a wonderful, just about 2 years that I worked there. So that's kind of how I got my start in design.
Sounds great. And then you moved to Continuum after that, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think I got to a point in designing shoes where I started to ask myself, well, how many more shoes can I really design before it starts to lose its value, and its excitement. And I love doing it. It's such a beautiful field, and the process, it's really rich, and the craft, I love it still today. But in terms of the output and moving the needle, I think I started to realize that it's less about the artifact and more about the story around it that really started to drive me. And that's when I really wanted to branch out and diverge in my career. And I knew that the best way to do that is to move to design consulting. So I heard at the time, because in that business model in design, you get a broader range of projects to work on, right? Because you get a multitude of clients from different industry. And so I put together my portfolio again, and ended up getting a job with Continuum, or Design Continuum, I think it was referred to back then, which is also headquartered in Boston. And I was there for 4 years, and I got to work on a number of projects in everything from consumer electronics to packaging, to branding and kitchen products, and even some service design projects as well. So that was a really pivotal time in my career, where I went from a specialty focusing on shoes, one product category, to applying design thinking and design process to really anything. So that was really important.
So what were the major difference between working at Continuum versus working at Smart Design?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I actually ended up leaving Continuum to do I took a self-imposed sabbatical for 1 year, actually in Costa Rica. That's where my father is from, and I have a lot of family there. And I wanted to go there and brush up on my Spanish, and I ended up getting a teaching role at a design university, and that was my first experience teaching at a collegiate level, and that was a great experience. But then I started to get the itch to get back into the design world and in practicing design. And that's when I ended up moving to New York City and working at Smart Design. And so I was at Smart Design for 4 years as well. And to answer your question, the difference between the two, I don't think there was a huge difference. It's Continuum and Smart Design are very similar in approach. They're very user-centered design companies, and I really loved that. I think it was just really a continuation of what I was doing at Continuum, but it was just, instead of in Boston, it was in New York City. And I think so. Essentially, I spent 8 years in design consulting, and I really grew up. I grew up as a designer on the human-centered design methodology. It was like designer boot camp for me, and that was really, those were my formative years, I think, as a designer.
Cool. And then you moved to Steelcase, basically decided to move out of consultancy again. And can you tell a little bit about the motivation and your role there?
Sure, yeah. So I was actually recruited to Steelcase via LinkedIn through one of their recruiters, and I wasn't pursuing anything at the time. I was really happy in New York at Smart, and but this opportunity came along, and I did a double take because of course I had heard of Steelcase. It's a very reputable design-led company, but the location was definitely threw me off. Being in West Michigan, I had never been to Michigan, and it wasn't necessarily a place that I was striving to get to. But I investigated further, and the role at Steelcase was really unique and interesting. It's an interesting intersection of design. So essentially, I was hired as a principal designer for their Steelcase's health division. So for the last 2 years now, I've been designing furniture and spaces. It's in physical, digital convergence within healthcare spaces. So that's like the waiting rooms in clinics, exam rooms, and the spaces in between, and designing for a number of stakeholders. So it's you have multiple users, really. It's patients, clinicians, facility managers.
Yeah.
So it's a really complex arena in the design field, and I think why I really took this opportunity was because, in my opinion, it's the new frontier of design, in health. There's so much opportunity to improve this space and to do it right, to do it in a really beautiful way as well. I didn't go into this, I didn't take this job to create more bland and ugly healthcare furniture, because that's not what I want to do. I think in our team, we all agree, there's so much opportunity to make this space very usable and help people, but also really beautiful and emotionally compelling.
Yeah, and I guess you need a quite holistic design approach. I guess you have also quite complex setup of stakeholders and user groups. It's not just the user using the product, but employees and the patient itself, and so on, and also multiple disciplines you need to utilize, right?
Yeah, that's right. So our team is certainly multidisciplinary. I work with marketers and engineers, interior designers, architects, and who else? Interaction designers, and researchers, strategists, and we even have an in-house, an internal clinician on staff who is also a trained architect, and she adds tremendous value to our work,
Mm-hmm.
and really acts as our sounding board, because she is still a practicing physician. So that makes it really really cool to have her there, and as a working professional in health. So it's really my role is essentially, the way I see it, is kind of a conductor. Like, I'm not always specializing or playing one particular instrument, the whole time. I think you know, I don't carry around a conductor's wand either, but it is a bit of harnessing a lot of these specialties into some kind of end result, some tangible design that
Mm-hmm.
that helps people in one way or another.
Can you tell a little bit about the importance of design within Steelcase, but also maybe generally speaking about the role of design within furniture and healthcare space?
So at Steelcase, it's very design led, and that's such an important ingredient to be successful as a designer for myself. And in this organization, you have three primary groups that try to work together, but sometimes hit their heads together on certain issues. So you have design, the group that I'm a part of, which focuses on primarily human desirability, or we're the spokespeople for that lens. You have engineering, which speaks for the technical feasibility, and you have marketing, which represents the business viability lens. And when we all come together and try to create something, some solution in furniture and space that hits on all three, that delivers on all three. And we know as designers that it's very important to prioritize the human desirability. At least for myself, I believe that human desirability should always come first, right? Because it really has to do with the why. Why are we creating something? How is this helping people? Why would people care about this? And if you don't have that, then it doesn't matter how well you can make it, and it doesn't matter if you can make it for very cheap and very cost effective. If people don't want it and don't desire it from the heart, and from in their lives, if they don't see a true need for it, then it doesn't. The other two lenses really don't matter. So that, in a nutshell, is really kind of to give you an idea of the dynamic and the collaboration that has to happen. And then to answer your second the second part of your question, particularly in healthcare and why design is so important. I think of I can't help but to think of the Ames splint design that they created for Herman Miller, I believe, and to me that's like the pinnacle, or the North Star, right? That I'm shooting for, and that I believe that our whole team is shooting for for Steelcase Health, right? We want to try to create something as iconic as that splint design, that really is hitting on two very important things, right? One is it's really helping people physically, but it's done in such a beautiful way, right? It's just such a beautiful object, and the way that it's produced, and the materiality of it. And so I think that's really the best way I can describe the best way that design can really create value in health.
And do you see this role of designers in that space and evolving, maybe to the aspect of digitalization, or generally speaking, or do you think it's more of a steady position?
Oh, it's certainly evolving. That the Ames splint is one example, and that's purely a physical object. But you're exactly right. It's so much more complex now. now we have not just physical, but a digital layer and a spatial layer, right? And so it's really taking that same approach, the same methodology as the Ames did on that splint design, but then applying it to a digital product or space and an interior, right? Because it's not, in the world we live in now is not products on pedestals anymore and in isolation, right? It's all about a larger story, a larger context, and a larger service that these tangible artifacts live in and need to work with. And so, yeah, that's a great question. It's so much about that, and not just in health, but in the larger, larger Steelcase and in larger furniture and interior industry. It's becoming more and more about this curation of space, and everything that goes within a space needs to have a rhyme or reason and have a purpose. And more we're seeing too the importance of kind of this, what we call, and it might be a jargony term, but plurality in the space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is essentially this mixture of a range of solutions that aren't all the same, right? And we see this in working environments and in classrooms and also now in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want just a one solution that fits every need necessarily, right? So because it becomes very quickly a sea of sameness and very boring. And so we need to account for that trend as well.
Yeah, super fascinating. And maybe you can share a little bit about what you do at Mothership. I think you founded it and leading the creative efforts there. Can you share a little bit about what exactly that is?
Yes, sure. So Mothership is now 2 years old. My partner and I, Martella Esposito, she is the primary founder and CEO of Mothership, and I'm the co-founder and design director. Essentially, Mothership is a nonprofit startup that's a digital platform and community for parents on health topics and for raising healthy families. And we're actually about to run a full pilot for the platform this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And Mothership is really grounded in empathy, empowerment, and non-judgment in the parenting space. And what makes Mothership different is that it's a way for parents to find health experts and resources that speak to their unique needs, backgrounds, and experiences. So we provide classes, support groups, resource curation by diverse health experts who are recent parents, who can speak to scientific recommendations in the context of the lived realities of parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
And all the health experts on the platform will be what we refer to as Mothership certified, which is essentially trained in our empathy, connection, and empowerment curriculum. And I like to refer to this as it's like a dating app, right? So really, it's about matching parents with very like-minded health experts that will really understand
Mm-hmm.
and who can relate to their particular unique life situation and context.
Do you have an app or is it a web-based service? How do you connect these people?
So it's going to be primarily web-based to start, but we are planning on delivering an app as a fast follow-up as well. And really why we started Mothership in the first place is is we recognized that millennial parents are a little different, right? millennial parents want to make their own decisions based on what's best for the unique needs of their family.
Mm-hmm.
And the current health system doesn't always support and respect that. And families are feeling information overload and judgment for their decisions. And my partner, Martel Esposito, who works in the maternal and child health space, had this idea to bring together public health and healthcare professionals, parents, and designers to see what we could come up with to create better experiences for families with raising healthy kids. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to create. And if you want, for the listeners, you can follow along on our development of Mothership on our Instagram at our.mothership to watch our progress and support our work.
Mm-hmm. We're going to put that into the description.
Perfect.
Can you tell a little bit about the design process you've been through to set this all up?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's been primarily Martel who's been running the show, of course, and it's really probably most similar to a service design project.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of for the designers listening in, it's really it's playing the long game. We've had to recruit many parents and health experts. We had to set up user testing. I think determining what needs we really need to address and to solve for. It's really no different than your classic human-centered design approach. That's really the methodology that we've been taking with this, and really my role as the design lead has been to make sure that our brand and messaging and voice and tone is consistent and is fresh and unique and really speaks to this demographic. And so that's been my primary role.
Mm-hmm. I see this very well connecting to what you do at Steelcase and Haircare, obviously, but also about the next topic we wanted to talk about. You've been creating a book. It's been on Kickstarter, if I'm correctly. Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I wrote a book this past 2 years, and it's called Touchy Feely, and what it is essentially is an exploration of emotional ergonomics to help foster human-centered inclusive design, or as I like to call it now, feeling-centered design or emotion-centered design. And what emotional ergonomics is if we take a step back and look at consider that traditional ergonomics is the study of the physical world with humans, and we ask ourselves questions as designers, like how comfortable is is this potato peeler in our hand when we're using it, right? Or sitting in a chair, does this chair have lumbar support? Does it is it comfortable to sit in? Does it follow the curvature of our spine? Whereas with emotional ergonomics, this topic I don't believe has really been documented thoroughly, and so this is something that I've always wanted to do, explore further, and essentially with emotional ergonomics, it becomes more of a complex dialogue between the physical world or the sensorial world, humans, our brains, and our hearts, right? So it's really about asking ourselves more, more of the ooey gooey side of these interactions, right? So like, how does sitting in this chair really make me feel? What is the larger context that's happening that the chair needs to support? On a more emotional or psychological level. And so that's essentially what Touchy Feely is all about. And so the book is is 100 touchies and 100 feelies. And a touchy is an illustration that I've hand drawn of a human interacting with some object, right? Or some physical experience or sensorial. And then the feely is the corresponding emotional reaction, which the way that I wrote it is very, it's like in a poem form, right? So it's like this very like day in the life of this interaction. And the way that I tried to make this really inclusive and deliver on that human-centered inclusive lens was in the feely and the emotional reaction. I tried to create a range of emotions, right? That could be coming from a multitude of humans, from different walks of life, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different areas in the world, different cultures even.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most challenging part when writing this book, right? Is to make sure that I'm really that it's not just one point of view, because it really is, because I'm the one who wrote it, but I really needed to truly empathize with how others might experience this one interaction. And so that's what makes, I think, the book really unique and interesting.
Yeah, that would have been my next question, actually, because there so maybe certain things that might feel different for certain people.
Sure.
And then there's a challenge maybe to capture that. But did you come up with these examples by, just like your daily life, just experiencing certain things? Or have, you've been sharing this all on Instagram as well. Was it reacting on certain comments? Can you tell a little bit about, like, how did you pick the examples?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of many things. Certainly my own experiences, just, living life every day, looking at things with fresh eyes, that are so mundane, like, I don't know, peeling a potato or riding the subway, holding onto a subway pole, swiping on your smartphone. I mean, it really could be anything, and that's what is so kind of poetic and beautiful, but also really overwhelming about the process. And yeah, certainly it's a mix of universal feelings that we can all relate to, but there's also many personal ones as well, that are offbeat and unusual. And so, yeah, I definitely, 2 years ago, I started to kind of pilot the idea on Instagram by posting, every few days, a new drawing, a new touchy, and asking the IG community, or those who followed me in the design community, what does this make you feel like? What is your feely from this touchy? And I got a lot of interesting reactions, and essentially it was my way of crowdsourcing, crowdsourcing the idea, and also getting different people's different perspectives, right? So it wasn't just my brain.
Did you try some of them then out? For example, if you were drawing something, grab a certain item and kind of reflect on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was all of that played into the writing of the book. The piloting on Instagram certainly helped drive certain fresh perspectives that found its way into the written word.
Yeah, I think it's such an important aspect of the design process. I think this book highlights also, I think what he said about the emotional part of ergonomics. It's so important to reflect on that during the design process, for example, a kitchen item, or could be also more complex things that has to do with digital, for example. But like reflect and ask yourself, like, what kind of is the emotional ergonomics there? How long did it take for you to draw each of these examples?
Yeah, so I actually started drawing these back in 2010.
Okay.
So I've been drawing them for a long time, 8 years.
Recycling.
Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to say how long it's hard to quantify how long in total it's taken me, but I started this back when I was working at Continuum in Boston, and the idea came from a project I was working on for a client there, and we were designing a new kitchen cleaning solution for the Chinese market, and it turned out one of the key insights from that project was that particular consumer in China was more fearful of the chemicals in the cleaning solution than they were of the actual natural dirt and grease they were cleaning in the kitchen. And so what we set out to do was design a solution that reduced the fear that this consumer had, right? And ultimately try to build trust in the consumer, trust in the product. And when you take a step back, really that is Touchy Feely, at the core. I mean, that is emotional ergonomics, right? You start with a desired emotion, right? A desired feeling. That's, if we want to create something that instills trust, then that really is feeling-centered design, right? Or human-centered design, I suppose, is also known as. But you're really putting the human feeling at the center. And so from that, really, my process for ideation was to start to do these drawings of interactions in the greater kitchen, right? So look beyond just other cleaning solutions, and I think we do that naturally as industrial designers. We look to analogous areas, and so what's more natural and trustworthy in the kitchen than food and food preparation, right? And so that's what I started to do was look to food preparation rituals and interactions to see if we can pull some inspiration and find another, if you ask yourself what's really trustworthy in the kitchen, it has to be stemming from something food related. So that was essentially the starting point of Touchy Feely.
Fascinating. And you were running a Kickstarter, if I'm correctly, and was quite successful. But how do people could still buy the book and get access?
Yeah, so yes, we ran a Kickstarter campaign that was successfully funded this summer, and that is over now. But we still have books for sale on Shopify, and for those listening who would like to still purchase a Touchy Feely book, you can do so on joey-zeledon.myshopify.com, and we can ship the book to anywhere in the world.
Great, thanks. We're going to put the link into the description as well.
Awesome, thanks, Sebastian.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much. I think great share out of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This has been truly a pleasure.
That was the episode. If you want to give us feedback on the podcast, have something to contribute to the next episode, or just want to get in touch, feel free to connect with us either on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram messages, or simply via the designdrives.org website. We love to hear from you.